Now the Leafs in 17th position are a point back of Washington. The Capitals in Detroit tonight. The Leafs slipped 2 back of Edmonton last night as the Oilers beat Hartford. With only 5 games left, the Leafs need every point they can muster.
Tonight from the Boston Garden, the Toronto Maple Leafs meet the Boston Bruins live on CHCH TV. Brought to you by Molson's Brewers of Molson Canadian, breaking away to the good times. And by Phillips, personal care, Philishave, and appliances.
The Leafs come to Boston knowing full well the Garden is always tough on visiting teams. And the Bruins are usually tough on the Leafs. Good evening, everyone. I'm Dave Hodge. Toronto hasn't beaten Boston in the last 12 meetings, and the Bruins have incentive tonight, too. They want to finish 8th or better and get home ice advantage in the first playoff round. In that regard, they're 1 point ahead of Minnesota. Now to talk about the Leafs in the broadcast booth, here is Brian McFarlane.
David, sometimes when you watch the Leafs play, you think that defeat does rest lightly on their shoulders. I asked a Leaf player, I can't name him, after the game in Pittsburgh last night about the Leaf situation. He pointed at his heart like this and shook his head as if to say, we just don't have enough heart. And they'll need plenty of heart and a lot of character here tonight because the Bruins will come at them in waves, as they usually do. And if they don't play well in their own zone, the Leafs are going to find themselves with their noses to the glass all night long. So they have got to play the Bruins kind of hockey, press the Bruins, play well, and forecheck very strongly in the Bruin zone, and keep a couple of wingers out at the point to make sure the puck stays in the zone. I don't know whether they can do it or not, but time will tell. Back to you.
Thank you, Brian, and we will return with the national anthems and the opening face-off in just a moment.
From Boston Garden, this is Bill Hewitt with Brian McFarlane. This is NHL Hockey Live from the Boston Garden.
Wilf Payma scores the only goal of the first period, his 36th of the season, to put the Leafs up by 1. Turnbull and Sittler assisted at 4:52, and the shots were even 6 apiece. And I think we can safely call that the best first period the Maple Leafs have played in a month. With me is Terry Martin, and there seems a sense of purpose and direction out here tonight. There's a special way you have to play in Boston, the way the Bruins use the boards, and this is something that the wingers have to keep in mind, and I thought you did a very good job. Tell us exactly what you must do to combat what the Bruins are so good at.
Well, the main thing in the Gardens here is the ice surface is so small that I think the forwards, we have to get on their defensemen real quick, and secondly, we got to maybe run a little bit of interference on their wingers to give our defensemen a little chance to move the puck in our own end.
Terry, congratulations on being nominated as the Maple Leafs representative in the Masterton Trophy voting. There are many words used to describe the recipient and what it stands for, but I think we can wrap it up by calling it an Unsung Hero Award, and you're most deserving among the Leafs. And the season really did turn around for you with the coaching change, and you got a chance to play with Sittler and Payma. Chance to play, it's what a lot of players would like, and it can turn a lot of careers around, can't it?
Yeah, it was quite an honor to be nominated. I think I have to give a lot of credit to Mike Nicklick, though, who, when he first took over, he inserted me back on the line with Darryl and Wilf, and we've been playing quite well together, and, you know, I can't forget those two guys. They've been a tremendous help to me.
You've never been known before as a scorer, and, of course, that might have been a rap against you when you weren't playing, which is almost unfair. You can't score from the bench. But now one more and you got 20, and I wonder if you have thought all along you could score that way, or whether this has changed your mind and now you feel you can.
Well, I always thought I could score, but I was more concerned about my defensive game, not being scored on, and that's what I thought my basic job was. But, you know, the goals are going in now, and I'll take them. You know, it'd be nice to hit 20, but my main goal is to get the team in the playoffs. You know, that'd be more of a satisfaction to me than getting the 20 goals.
Okay, to get into the playoffs, you got to get something going. All the talk in the world about this schedule and somebody else's schedule, if you wait too long to get the wins you think you can get, it may be too late. A win tonight, I'm sure, would boost the confidence, and momentum is something that you could take out of here.
Yeah, well, there's no question if we win tonight, that's going to give us a lot of momentum, and our next 3 games are at home, and they're going to be the real big ones. They're must games for us. We have to win at home.
Okay, and that's been a problem, but right now you can't worry about that. It's winning on the road in Boston, and it is a 1-0 lead. Terry, again, congratulations on the Masterton selection in Toronto. The Leafs are leading 1-0 on Wilf Payma's goal, and Peter Puck has found his way with no problem to Boston. Ryan McFarlane will introduce the night segment from Peter's scrapbook when we return in a moment.
It's Toronto 1, Boston 0. As you know, hockey pucks are frozen before every game, and our friend Peter Puck was trapped in the freezer last night. Couldn't make the game in Pittsburgh, but he's here tonight to tell you about some Leaf old-timers going back about 49s. Names like Apps and Broda, Stanowski and Drillin. Here he is, the imp of the ice.
Hi, gang. I'd like to tell you about some special events in the world of hockey. I call them my memorable moments. Hey, ouch! Not easy being a superstar. Now hold the sticks, fellas. I'm about to look into my hockey scrapbook. Let me see. Oh, yes. Here's a look at the Toronto Maple Leafs of some 40 years ago. And here we are in the dressing room of these stars of yesteryear, an era of straight-bladed sticks and a straight-laced boss in Mr. Smythe. Now let's all listen as a famous Canadian author, Morley Callahan, describes the scene in this Puck Palace, the home of hockey heroes like Apps and Drillin, Horner and Stanowski. I remember it well.
Where's there a kid who wouldn't love to be in the dressing room when the players start getting ready for the game, when the noisy kidding starts? The hockey star is a North American hero with plaster medals covering old battle scars. All the gold in the North Country couldn't buy you a membership in this club, where rubbing liniment hangs in the air instead of expensive cigar smoke. You have to fight your way into this exclusive circle. You have to earn the right to wear these uniforms. No wonder dressing for a game becomes a kind of ritual. You wouldn't think the players could get hurt under all that armor. The padding gives protection but doesn't cramp the player's style. It can only cover the few spots that usually take the worst punishment. The leather may take the sting out of a whizzing puck or soften the blow of a flying stick. But in spite of the elaborate stuffing, even the toughest of them must be patched up now and then. 15 minutes to game time, skates go on last. They've been tuned up beforehand by a master craftsman, ground to razor sharpness so the players can spin on a dime. It's natural for highly strung players to get all tightened up before a game. Competitive jitters, they call it. So a smart coach doesn't mind a little clowning. It gets the boys feeling free and loose. All right, boys. The player always likes to touch the sticks and get the feel of them. They have to be comfortable, for each stick is a little different, just as each player is a little different. They've been carefully selected beforehand, ash and hickory. They've been cut to legal length and carefully balanced. They've been trimmed and wound with tape for better control of the sliding puck. 5 minutes left as the little corporal goes into action. Listen, 12,000 people are waiting to see what you got. Better show them something or else. Get out in that ice and stay on it. Do they hear his words? Are they thinking about the crowds or about Saturdays and spots down the river? Are they thinking it's tough to work for a living or wondering why they can't save more of their salary? What does any fellow think of when the boss starts the pep stuff? And these stars are not much different. Except for that extra something, they'd be working with their old teammates in the offices and on the land. And someday they'll be back in Canadian life as teachers and businessmen, journalists and farmers. What they learn in the hockey rink, they'll bring back to our national life.
On this night so long ago, the New York Rangers are the foe. The players are ready, they stand strong and tall, and up in the gondola is the most famous broadcaster of them all.
Backhanded it down the ice. Again, the Leafs try, and Davidson on the left side made a long rink-wide pass to the far side. Drillin was too slow in getting after it, and Neil Colville beat him to it. Neil Colville stick handles up to his own blue line, over to Heller and Shabicki on the far side. But the pass goes astray. Now Campman and Apps. Apps takes the pass, going over the line, back to Davidson. He shoots, he scores! And that's the equalizer. It's 1-1.
And that's the way it was almost half a century ago, when Saturday night was hockey night, just like it is today. It's funny how some things change and others stay the same. Like me, Peter Puck. That's it. Another peek into my hockey history book, and there's lots more stories in here I'll be bringing to you. Uh-oh, yikes! Ouch! Meanwhile, it's back to the old ice. It's not easy being a superstar, but it sure is fun. Bye-bye now.
Scores again with another look into his scrapbook. Some old faces from the 40s there. Speaking of old faces from that era, we have Dick Beddoes, the league leader in check suits and $100 hats, standing by. He'll be along when our intermission continues in just a moment.
The Maple Leafs played an efficient first period to take a 1-0 lead over the 8th place Boston Bruins. And with Dick Beddoes, maybe we should spend some time on the Ian Turnbull theory, the idea that when he is supposed to be the star of the defense, he can be.
Indeed, he's been the guy we've all talked about. He picks up the slack when Boreas Selman can't play and won't play for 3 weeks. Selman had, of course, set up the goal neatly for Paymont, but he had 3 baleful shots beside that, all on the net. He's really good from the point, accurate, low, and hard. And he generally was very efficient, took guys out along the boards as though this extra sort of cozier dimension helps him in defensive ways. Turnbull's best period, I think, in several weeks, and certainly the best Maple Leaf first period in, you said, maybe more than a month. I think they had a good first period against Montreal. That seems to be 5 weeks ago. If they play like this, David, they got to maybe be 16th. 16th, for God's sake.
Washington is leading 1-0, but at this point, the Leafs can't worry about that. If they can get 2 points out of here, they're happy no matter what happens in Detroit. In just a moment, Bill Hewitt, Brian McFarlane, the play-by-play of the second period.
It's 1-0, the Toronto Maple Leafs over the Bruins. Here's Bill Hewitt with a quick summary.
This is Toronto Maple Leaf Hockey live from Boston. With the score, Toronto 1, Boston 0. Our telecast returns in a moment.
Bruins have won 2 straight. On home ice, they're invincible. Well, almost so. They've won 7 straight. They've won 11 of their last 12, 16 of their last 19 here at Boston Garden. And so far tonight, they're being shut out. The Leafs lead 1-0. We're reaching the halfway point of the game.
With 5 minutes and 32 seconds left to play in the second period, the score, Toronto 2 and Boston 0. And it's outside.
Leafs are taking the play to the Bruins, and the Bruin fans don't like it. Speaking of great Bruins, here's Eddie Shore. This is from the Bob Goldham collection. Gave me some of his old Beehive cards the other day. Eddie Shore was one of the best and the meanest of the old-time defensemen. He came out of Western Canada to start him with the Bruins. For years, he ran the Springfield Club, and because of his methods there, the players called Al Eagleson in the years ago to straighten the problems out, and that was as much responsible for the beginning of the Players Association as anything else. Eddie Shore. Well, the Leafs wind up their 3-game road trip here and return to Maple Leaf Gardens Wednesday night next for a game against the Chicago Blackhawks. So watch for that one on this channel. The Leafs in Chicago Wednesday night from the Gardens.
So the score at the end of the second period, it's Toronto Maple Leafs 2 and Boston 1.
The Leafs hold their 1-goal lead as the teams traded goals in that second period. Bill Derlego up the Leafs margin to 2-0 with his 34th of the season before Mike O'Connell came back with the Bruins' first goal of the game. First thus far at 16:01, and the Bruins outshot the Leafs 11-5. Here is Dwight Foster, who had a good chance in the final minute to tie it up. It seemed that once you got in a good scoring position, Sirha was back after both of you had kind of been out of position when you got the puck.
Right, well, somebody took a long shot from the left side, and Sirha kicked it out right to me coming in from the right, and I tried to cut into the center, and he got back before I got over and made a good stop on it.
Dwight, you're known as the hard luck guy in Boston in terms of injuries. 20 goals doesn't represent great success in the NHL anymore, but I'm sure you're very happy to have it. Detail some of the physical problems you've had and how happy you are this year to be healthy.
Well, I am very happy this year. I've played almost all the games, I think this is my 72nd game, and most I've ever played. First couple of years I had knee injuries, cartilage, ligaments, and actually my 4th year pro, but really only playing about maybe 2.5. So I just hope things keep going. Like you said, 20 goals isn't a lot, but to me it's a big thing. First year getting it this year, and hopefully next year will bring more.
Now the line juggling of Gerry Cheevers is something that I haven't been used to in watching Boston teams, but it seems that you're with a couple different players every time you're on the ice.
Yeah, past few years we usually try and keep the lines together, and especially getting close to playoffs, but Gerry tries to use me in different situations, and A lot of times I'm out there with different guys, like I say, every line, but I guess you got to do that, utility man, and it helps to play with everybody, and I don't mind it.
I have in my mind the memory of you playing very well in past games against the Leafs. You had a couple, I think, earlier this season in a tie here, and I wonder if you feel that way too.
Well, I like to play against Toronto. I know I came from Toronto. That's where I was born, and everybody said, "Why don't you want to play with Toronto?" And I say, I like playing against Toronto, and I have a lot of friends to watch the games. And like you said, I've got a couple of goals against Toronto, so I like to have one good team in the league. And yeah.
Dwight, the Bruins want to finish 8th or better. You want to have the home ice advantage, and if you get it, as it appears you will, it looks as though you'll be playing Minnesota. Now that brings back memories of a game here, but it also reminds us that the North Stars have never won in the Boston Garden. That is a pretty good incentive for you to play well for the rest of the season, isn't it?
Well, I sure hope so. We like we said, we're going to play Minnesota. They haven't won here in 35 games. We feel that we can beat them. They play well at home, though. Feeling if we get 8th place, we're going to have home ice advantage, which means a lot in a short series.
Okay, Dwight, thank you very much. Dwight Foster, who has 20 goals this season. The Bruins are trailing in this game at the end of 2 periods of play. The score, Toronto 2 and Boston 1. Leafs are leading Boston 2-1 at the end of 2 periods of play, and true to the unpredictability of this team, the Leafs came into Boston, and the people who followed them almost seemed as though they were on a death watch, waiting to count the Leafs down and out. But this is a team that does well when you least expect it and flops when big things are expected.
Yeah, but it's curious. Turnbull is still playing well in the defense. His poke checking has been a very big factor in a situation when the Boston club indeed came on in that period. What Boston's lacking, they've got lots of fury on the attack, but it's impotent because they have no big man in the center. No man in the slot like Esposito used to be, and you see nobody there. So the Leaf defense is having it easy in front of Sirra, who's playing pretty well. He took pucks off Marat, Casper, and Jonathan. As you pointed out to Dwight Foster, he had a chance also late in that period.
The Leafs go into a 3rd period against the Bruins, probably not mindful of the fact that Boston has not allowed a goal by an opponent in 10 of the last 13 third periods they've played. Of course, if the Leafs don't allow Boston to score, that's fine. But the Bruins have been playing very well in the 3rd period, and the Leafs have not shown an ability to play this well for 3 full periods. So that's going to be important.
Indeed, it is. The fact is, we haven't seen them play really more than 20 minutes. As they beat St. Louis in a good 40-minute effort in the Gardens a while ago. But we've got to see them play 60 minutes, and the Boston club is coming strong.
Okay, thank you very much, Dick. We'll be back at the Boston Garden with the Leafs ahead by a goal in just a moment.
Toronto 2, Boston 1. Good exciting hockey, good old-fashioned hockey, you might call it, the way Johnny Peirson, now a Boston broadcaster and a former Bruin, used to play the game. But let's talk about the game in a moment. First, what about this move of the Bruins to Salem, New Hampshire? Bring us up to date.
Well, Brian, I think a lot of things that have to be decided between now and the time the decision might be made for the Bruins to definitely go to Salem, New Hampshire. The New Hampshire legislature will be involved. They have passed in Salem, New Hampshire, the town where the arena, the rink would be built, have passed a law where they can allow dog racing if it's attached to the complex. That has been a stumbling block all along, but that has finally been approved by the people of Salem, New Hampshire. And from this moment on, with the kind of tax concessions that the Delaware North, which is the Jacobs brothers and the owners of the Boston Bruins, want, it will have to be approved by the legislature, and I think that's where it stands right at this moment. But there is a lot of decisions that will have to be made. It's a 50-50 proposition, I would say.
And it sounds awfully complicated, dog racing and hockey. We better get talking about the game itself, which has been a very good hockey game.
Well, this has been a classic game as far as the checking is concerned. I thought the Leafs have checked the Bruins extremely well. They've done their homework. I think somebody has had some advanced scouting down here. They're covering the Bruin point men in the Toronto end. that's been the key to the Bruins offense, has been the defensemen who have really been able to account for, I think, a lot of the scoring opportunities the Bruins have generated over the past 30, 40 games.
Well, Johnny, if you let the Bruins hem you in your own zone, you're dead before you start. And the Leafs have been frantically trying to get the puck out at times, but also keeping their cool and their composure here tonight, and have, in effect, taken the game to the Bruins.
Well, I think the defense for the Leafs, although it is a weakened defense by the fact that Borje Salming is absent, moving the puck very quickly, which is the thing against good forechecking. If you hold the puck too long, you tend to get pinned in your own end in the corner and you start to panic a little bit. But they have kept their cool nicely. The forwards have played their position, and I think overall the Leafs have played an exceptionally good game here tonight.
Yes, you mentioned Salming missing. Brad Park out of the lineup for the Bruins with a sore knee as well. So thank you, Johnny Peirson. Our intermission continues in just a moment.
Leafs on goals by Pema and Derlego, leading the Bruins 2-1 at the end of 2 periods of play. Johnny Peirson put the Salem, New Hampshire situation into perspective accurately, I think. And let's now ask Harry Sinden, the general manager of the Bruins, this. What do the fans think about this from what you've been able to determine?
They're certainly opposed to it. You know, the Bruins have been here 60 years and are an institution in town, and naturally the fans are opposed to it, and particularly fans on the south side of Boston. It's going to be very difficult for them to get up there. However, the city has been a little dragging its heels in this whole affair, and I don't think they've left the Bruins owners much choice in the matter.
Is there an element of negotiation in this? If you got a new building, would you reconsider, or are you committed to the move if everything goes through in New Hampshire?
I think the latter is true. My information is that if everything can come together in New Hampshire, that the team will go there.
I read a fan survey, or perhaps a Bruins survey of where fans live, that geographically didn't make this such a big problem for many fans. You mentioned those in the South, but there are those who might benefit, who come here and would rather go there. Is that not true?
There's many of them, and southern New Hampshire fans too will benefit from this move. It's quite accessible, this the site, and people in the north and west of town and in the center city shouldn't have too much difficulty driving out. It's about 30 miles from Boston.
Does tradition, or should tradition, play any part in this? The idea that the Boston Bruins wouldn't be the Boston Bruins?
Well, it's a suburb of Boston, and in many buildings today, you take the building in Minneapolis and the building in Washington, and many buildings throughout the league are not really located in the central city, in fact, located in other cities or towns around there. So this is not too far removed from that.
Well, we can talk about the New York Football Giants who play in New Jersey, and we can also talk about the hockey game, which is going on. Here's Bill and Brian.
Period summary, it's Derlego at 13:22, O'Connell 16:01, Boston out shooting Toronto 11-5. Score, Toronto 2, Boston 1. This is your Molson hockey telecast.
The Leafs have only one victory against the Bruins in 24 starts. A little humor in the proceedings there, Bill, as Sira came out to challenge O'Reilly, and O'Reilly looked back and kind of leaned his head over as if to say, I can't understand a word you're saying. Oh, we found him in the crowd. Bob Armstrong, my former teammate, former Boston Bruin. Last I heard of Bob, he was teaching at the Lakefield School outside of Peterborough.
Garden. Boston Garden. This is Bill Hewitt with Brian McFarlane. With the score, Toronto 3, Boston 2. Our telecast returns in a moment. With 6 minutes, 1 second left in the game, the score is Toronto 3, Boston 2.
And the Leafs defeat the Boston Bruins by a score of 3-2 and get back into the playoffs, tied with the Edmonton Oilers, but in 16th position because of more victories. Washington leading Detroit 2-0 at last report. If the Capitals win that, they will stay ahead of the Leafs. The 3 stars, I got to do these quickly because we have to get to our guest. Turnbull, the entire Leaf defense played well. Turnbull, first star. O'Reilly, second star. And Yuri Sirha, the third star, and the fourth star was the goal post that helped Sirha out in the final minute. You're beaming, and you have every right to. That is as good a game as we've seen the Leafs play in quite a while.
Well, I wouldn't say all year, Dick. I think that they have played some real good games. If you recall, we played good games against Philadelphia, and we've played some good games against Montreal. We probably didn't win them, but they were good hockey games. Because you lose doesn't say it isn't a good hockey game, but tonight is especially good. As you know, we came on the right end of the tally.
Well, you make a point. Tie in Philadelphia last time. Last time you played the Islanders, you beat them. Last time you played the Canadians, you beat them for a period and played a pretty good hockey game at the Forum. But then there's some other games against...
Last time we played Winnipeg, we lost 8-3. So, you know, what you lose on the oranges, you make on the lemons.
Yeah, but you got to be frustrated by this. I mean, you expect a team that can play this well against a Boston team that is in 8th place to play this well against a Pittsburgh team that's 13th, and it didn't happen.
Well, I think it's a matter of just keeping the spectators on their nervous system, and but we'll be in the playoffs, and when we're in the playoffs, and I think we will be. It'll be a whole new ball game, and we'll revise ourselves and revive the team, and probably go a lot further than some people think we can go.
How devastating would it be if you didn't make it?
Well, I don't know. I have one of the shareholders here tonight, and Dick Beddoes. I imagine he'd be calling for a few scalps, and with many more. But on the other hand, to me, it would be disastrous.
Do you have an idea which team you think you can knock out more easily than another? Washington, Edmonton. The Rangers, you know, they're only 2 points ahead of you.
Well, David, it's a funny thing. You mean to say you play each game as it comes up, and the tougher the games are and the tougher our opponents are, we usually come up to the surface. And I don't care who we play. If we have to beat them, we got to beat them. That's all. And we have beaten some of the best teams in the league, the Islanders and Philadelphia, and teams such as, if you call New York a hot shot team, why, we've beaten them too. But it'll be a real battle right down the wire.
Isn't it ironic that you spent all season long supposedly looking for a goaltender, made a trade for Rutherford, made a trade for Larocque, and in the biggest game of the season, which this one was, Yuri Sirha, the guy who was here at the beginning, plays very well for you and helps in the victory.
Well, he's a great goalkeeper, but you know, the thing in the goalkeeper is to be consistent. And sometimes he's not as consistent as we'd like him to be. But tonight he was consistent and we won, and that's the main thing.
All right, Harold, congratulations, and good luck the rest of the way. Not too far to go as the Leafs battle for a playoff position. We'll return to the Boston Garden, the Leafs having beaten the Bruins 3-2.
Well, as Harold Ballard once told me, you're a rooster today and a feather duster tomorrow, and the Leafs are roosters tonight. They have a lot to crow about after a 3-2 victory here at the Boston Garden. Now, Washington won over Detroit 2-0 tonight, so they stay just 1 point ahead of the Toronto Maple Leafs. But as for the game itself, you might say it was the 3 Ds that did it for the Leafs: desire, dedication, determination. A couple of C's might be thrown in, character and composure as well. But Payma scored his 36 in the first period at 4:52 from Turnbull and Sittler. Then Derlego made it 2-0 in the second, his 34th of the year from Maloney and Farish at 13:22. O'Connell, who really had a strong game for Boston tonight, scored his 14th from Cashman and Casper at 16:01. The Bruins applied all kinds of pressure late in that second period and could not score. But in the third, McNabb got his 35th goal from O'Reilly and Jonathan at 7:01, and it just looked then that the Bruins might be able to pull a victory out here, as they have so often in the past. The Leafs have only one victory to show in 24 previous meetings against Boston. Now it's 2 in 25. Then came Martin's game-winning shot, his 20th of the year, a 20-goal season for Terry Martin from Payma and Boschman at the 9-minute mark. The Leafs were able to hang on. You remember the play by Cashman going around the defense, in on Sirha, popping it up. Sirha made one save, then came back, got the rebound, even got a third shot that came back. And then the shot off the goal post in the dying seconds by O'Connell, and the Bruins could not do it. The Leafs won it 3-2. The 3 stars were Turnbull, O'Reilly, and Sirha, and the Bruins, who had won 7 straight here at the Boston Garden and 16 out of 19, came out losers tonight against the Toronto Maple Leafs. We'll return with more right after this. Overtime, taking you behind the hockey headlines. On Overtime tonight, let's meet Dick Beddoes, sports director of CHCH TV in Hamilton. Our guest tonight is the coach of the Boston Bruins, Gerry Cheevers. Once again, here's Dave Hodge.
Thank you, Brian. Gerry, the Leafs have problems that you don't need and probably don't want to know about, but in analyzing this team, it is interesting, and I'm sure you'll be interested in it, that you seem to bring out some of the best hockey in the Leafs. They tied you in here last time. You tied them at the Gardens last time, and here's a Maple Leaf victory. And it seems that the style of hockey the Bruins play, the Leafs can play if they put their mind to it.
Yeah, we talked about that before the game tonight. We thought if there was a team that was similar to us, it might possibly be the Toronto Maple Leafs. And, you know, I guess similar styles tend to attract, I guess. And but we have a tough time playing against them. I don't know if it's motivation or style or whatever you have, but, you know, we just don't have a killer instinct against them.
Well, yeah, I think you had the killer instinct, but the Leafs might have had more of it, especially in the slot area where Middleton was on his back on the ice more tonight than he probably was standing up.
Well, you know, there's a lot of clutching and grabbing going on, and I thought, you know, that like we mentioned earlier, that we did hold the attack for a couple of periods. When that happens, there tends to be a lot of grabbing and clutching and holding and tackling, or whatever you want to call it, right? It's not sour grapes on, but it's just a fact, and you know, the few times they were in our ends, they did have wide open opportunities.
You'll generally take a game that is played like that with a referee not calling very much. It usually works to your advantage.
Well, it does. You know, John McCauley, I think, is the best referee in the league by far, and he's very liberal compared to the other ones, and, you know, we expect that. We got no complaints in that area. It's I respect him and his decisions out there, but you know, we don't have the killer instinct to put the puck in the net. We have to work very hard to score.
What you don't have is Phil Esposito in the slot, who can fend off those guys that are attacking him.
Not yet. We really don't. It's you know, Peter's the closest thing we have to Phil, and Peter's a good goalie. He got us a very important goal tonight, and unfortunately they come back to score and really sat on it. And you know, but we're laborers when we have to score. We really have to work hard at it.
Do you think you shot enough tonight? You shot them, but you only got 25.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, I thought with the territorial play we had that we should have maybe had 35 or 40 shots.
Yeah, you were finessing maybe too much.
Yeah, and we're not that type of a team. I mean, it's tough to have the puck for as long as we did and not have as many shots as we did.
And you come on as a third period club usually as well.
Yeah, well, you know, tonight the goal they got in the third period was the second goal in the last 10 games they've got in the third period on us.
Gerry, Brad Park did not play tonight, and everybody who watches hockey hopes that is a temporary thing, as is suggested. Precautionary, or is this something that could lead to larger problems?
Well, I don't know. I'm not a doctor or a medic. It just happened the last 24 hours, but you know, we felt that you know, rest is the most important thing, and I guess I wouldn't say it's precautionary. I think he does need a rest for his leg too, and but it's a day-to-day thing, and we'll have to see what happens if he can play Saturday. He's been a great player for us this year. He's been a guy that was very iffy at the start of the year, just played terrific for us.
Yeah, he supervises your attack, especially inside the other club's blue line.
Yeah, he's a very ingenious quarterback, if you want to call him that.
Well, suppose now you wind up at a pier, you have a shot of playing Minnesota, where you had a war here the last time you played. What about going against them?
Well, I wouldn't even call it a war. If that was a war, then we got peaceful times. Believe me, it wasn't as the impact of that. It had no impact on us, and it wasn't as severe as everyone thought it was. It was a bunch of fights, and it had no impact on our team too. I think the main thing in that situation is the fact that they've never won in Boston Gardens, and it's, you know, if there is psychological edges, that's one of them.
Were you surprised that Glenn Sonmore was so antipathetic toward you? Wanted your head on a plate or something to that order?
He wanted it in a basket, really. You know, you know, I can't answer for what he says. I have enough problems worrying about what I say, and I don't understand what his thinking was. You'd have to ask him.
Are you pretty secure in 8th place? I realize there's only 1 point difference, but to check the schedules, it would seem as though there's not going to be a strong challenge for Minnesota unless they pull some upsets and unless you fall flat. Are you counting on playing the series in this building to open in this building if it should be against Minnesota?
Well, we have to be positive and think that way. You know, I think you only get in trouble when you forecast, but we're planning that way for sure.
Well, it's, you know, I find it a little upsetting that we're looking at 8th place for Boston. 8th place for Boston. This is the big bad Bruins, or the big good Bruins, whatever you want to talk about. The Maple Leafs struggling to be 16th. Isn't that depressing from a standpoint of old fans or maybe moderately aged fans?
Well, it's depressing for Bruins fans. I really don't care about the Maple Leafs, whatever position they're fighting for. But
Maple Leafs still draw. You people aren't drawing quite as well.
Well, I don't think we've done that bad. But, our horrendous start really stopped us from being farther up. But what the heck, in this day and age of hockey, like I've always said, if you don't win on the road, you're not going to win a series anyway. So what's the difference if you end up 5th, 6th, or 8th? I mean, you're going to have to win on the road to win a series and a championship.
Well, unless it's a best of 7 or best of 5, and you win 3 in your own building. And
well, that's still a little iffy, believe me. I'd rather see a team win a couple on the road. I mean, the Islanders didn't win a championship last year. They won with all home games. They won more road games, I think, than they did home games.
You talk about the defense. We did talk about Park, but Bork, O'Connell, a big part of this team, and I wouldn't want to go back to the days of Orr when he was such a part of the offense, because comparisons to him never seem to make a whole lot of sense. But your offense, lacking beyond McNabb and Middleton up front, really depends on those defensemen, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sure does. I think by the time the season's over, our defense is going to have over 80 goals. And, I've never compared it to other teams in the past, but that's an awful lot of goals for defense to get. And that's, means they're in at least 1 goal a game. They get 1 goal a game. There's no telling how many assists they're involved in. But we have some good offensive defensemen, and we use them that way, too.
What about the move to play Bork up front on the power play?
Well, we had to really pick our best shooter. It was twofold. The reasons, first of all, was to penetrate and get in their end, and he was our strongest skater and could lug the puck the best to set up. And secondly, I felt with the power play with Raymond coming off his opposite wing, he was our best shot. But those power plays, I think everyone's catching on to them. I think a lot of teams use them, and they're being defended against now better than they were at the start. And then we have to, get a little more variety into it, I think, to make it Raymond Bork effective there.
Are you happy with your...
we got to run. Jerry has places to go, and so do we. Our thanks to Gerry Cheevers for appearing on Overtime, and we'll continue from the Boston Garden in just a moment.
The opinions expressed on Overtime tonight, while provocative, interesting, perhaps outrageous, and hopefully entertaining, are not necessarily those of the sponsors, the station, its management, or employees, and are the responsibility of the individuals involved.
The Leafs came in here out of a playoff spot, and now, for a while at least, they're back in 16th place, just barely. They don't exactly, Dick, have a bandwagon going, but this is a little bit like falling on and off. Because
David, I would go a long way and stay a long time to see the game we saw tonight. This was a good, boisterous hockey game. Lots of bumping and rubbing and some good play in every direction. Settlebauer played well tonight. First game he's played, and perhaps after the first 3 that was with Maple Leafs, for example. Pat Hickey had a pretty good game tonight. A good collective effort by the Leafs. Hard to understand 24 hours ago how terrible they looked.
Well, I think it can be important. You never know. But going home with something like this happening on the end of a road trip, they've got 3 straight games at home now, and those are going to tell. They finished the season in Quebec, and that may well be an important game, but really it depends on what they do at home. If they play well, I think they can make
Calgary Flames Saturday night.
And the Calgary Flames are going down to their 4th consecutive defeat tonight against the Canadiens, and will be on the end of a road trip. But we look at it here. The Leafs are tied with Edmonton, but in the playoffs because of more victories than the Oilers. They're a point behind Washington, the Capitals, winning tonight, and they're only 2 points behind the Rangers, who have a monster schedule ahead of them. 2 games against the Flyers, a game against Montreal, and a game against the Islanders included in their package of 5 to play. So really the Rangers can't sit back yet. I would think still the Leafs have to beat Washington. I think that's the team they've got to beat out.
The fact is that Edmonton's got a much easier schedule than the Maple Leafs have. Let's make the point about the Rangers. About a month ago, the distinguished Ralph Mellanby, who does some work on these telecasts, told you and I, off mic, that indeed he thought Rangers would be a team to be out, and he may indeed be right. They have they got 2 points, maybe Chicago, then they've got those big clubs to play.
It's possible Rangers would only get 2 more points, and that's giving them a victory at home against Chicago. They're going to have to upset somebody to get any more than that. Another important fact here, with these teams so close, is that victories may well determine the last playoff spot or 2. Now, the Leafs, if they end up tied in the standings with the Rangers, would lose, but they would win a tie against either Washington or Edmonton. In fact, that's why we say they're in the playoffs now, because they have won more victory than the Edmonton Oilers. So that's all important, and that's an advantage Leafs have over Washington and Edmonton that could be very important. The unknown factor really at this point with respect to the Leafs' opponents is Washington. If the Capitals can continue to play the way they have, then the Leafs could play well and still not make it.
Yeah, even playing this well, yes, that's indeed right.
If the Capitals keep beating people they're not supposed to.
But the broad stroke of irony through the whole season is that if they were playing constantly since the middle of October the way they played tonight, they're now challenging for one of those maybe top 7 or 8 spots, or maybe higher than that. This was a splendid effort by the Toronto club. We use the word splendid, that's a big league adjective, but we haven't seen them play like this. Maybe the best game all year that I've seen them play, for 60 minutes.
Yeah, well, their best games, I think all you got to do is look near the top of the standings and remember the time they beat the Islanders. Remember the time they beat the Canadiens at the Gardens. Remember any game you want to against Philadelphia, because the Flyers didn't beat them all season long. This one against the Bruins, Minnesota, 9th place. Leafs beat them 4 straight, and it really is strange. And yet, wasn't it always that way? I mean, didn't the Leafs seem to always play better when the opposition
We always
was
used to say the better. We always played Canadiens at a 2-1
even when they were
game.
winning Stanley Cups.
Precisely.
They were that way.
Always that. They were beaten 11-0 one night in 63-64 by the Boston Bruins, who were the worst Boston club of a terrible Boston era of 6 finishes in the basement. And then they walked in the next night against a contending club in Chicago and beat that good club in Chicago at the time 2-1. So that's right. That history of playing against the better teams is what Maple Leafs are all about. But last night in Pittsburgh, for goodness sake, you know, we have
they might have won that one if they hadn't fought at the end of the second period and taken
Larry Boschman getting hair-pulling penalties and so on.
It'll be said, I'm sure it has been said, that this is much ado about very little, whether the Leafs finish 16th or 17th. But let me say this, it's interesting because it's so unpredictable. I mean, the fun part of this thing is to say, I think they're going to make it. And then the next night have to turn around and say, no, they're not. And now come back and say, well, it looks as though with a victory over the Bruins, it looks as though they might make it.
I think you're right. In the great cosmic scheme of things, there are a billion Chinese that couldn't care less about what's going to happen. It's important, though, to the shareholders.
I got news for you. There's some Torontonians that couldn't care less, too.
There's some. But listen, there's 2 billion. There's 2 billion people out there watching us tonight. We hope, and I think that that's the case. This is the big. Don't forget the Jays, forget the Argonauts. The Leafs are the big story in Toronto.
For a perverse sort of interest, this is better than the Leafs sitting in 11th place, waiting to see who they're going to beat. Okay,
life and death.
We'll be back in just a moment. Well, to repeat, the Leafs back into a playoff spot, 16th officially, and they are that way because Terry Martin, who talked with us during one of the intermissions, scored his 20th goal, that cherished 20th for Terry Martin, who, if he'd been playing left wing with Sittler all season long, might well have 30 or 40. Martin wins it for the Leafs in the 3rd period at the 9-minute mark, a 3-2 victory. So our next telecast on this station will be next Wednesday night, the Chicago Blackhawks at Toronto. Only 2 more games left for the Leafs after that one.
Tonight's game has been a special presentation of Molson's, brewers of Molson Brador. Take the time to appreciate it. And of Phillips, personal care, Philishave, and appliances. The Leafs on CHCH TV is protected by copyright and is intended solely for the entertainment of the viewing audience. Reproduction by any means, in whole or in part, without the express written permission of Canadian Sports Network Limited, is prohibited.